Um, Thank you guys for having me and us. I actually did want to just start off. My name is Deocampo. I'm the RVP of at Undertone, but Maya had said something earlier in the day about being the only when you walk into a room. And I love that I'm not the only working mom. I love that I am not the only Filipino woman in the room. And I'm not the only one that loves ice cream in this room. So I am thrilled to be able to talk to Chrissy today. We got a chance to catch up last week. Um, but I'd love to let everybody else kind of know how you got here in your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for having me today. And I'll echo what Del said. Really exciting to see women in leadership, people of color, folks that weren't necessarily born in the US, because a lot of times when we go back to our companies, that's all you see and that's all you think is out there. So it's exciting to and emotional, right, to be here with many of you today. My name's Chrissy. I work at Church and Dwight on a 500 million plus brand called Vitafusion. I started in an e-commerce role, but now I'm back into traditional brand management, if you will. Prior to coming to Church and Dwight, I've worked on brands large and small, between strategic innovation, shopper marketing, brand management, and e-commerce. On the Tide innovation side, the Splenda brand, a couple of startup brands as well, and then a couple years in pharma. And what really drew me to the role that I'm in today is working on a brand that truly makes an impact in the community and stands for a purpose. And I think I can say for all the brands that I've touched in my lifetime, I gravitated to those brands because of that reason, because we all as marketers want to make an impact and we're not just selling a product, right? So that's how I got to where I'm at today. But personally, I was born in South Korea. So again, resonate with, the multiple languages and sometimes having to translate one thing to another. And my husband's family is from Puerto Rico. So both of us come from families where community and impact is huge, and the value of family and bringing people together in the community is something that's top of mind.
That's awesome. I know that somebody earlier had mentioned that being inclusive and the marketing that you do really stems from the core values of what the brand has to say. So what are Vitafusion's kind of core missions and values?
Yeah, so before dabbling in the world of marketing, my background is as a registered dietitian. So food security is something that's near and dear to my heart. And, for those of you who aren't as familiar, food security as defined by the USDA means, access to all people at all times to enough food to have a healthy and active lifestyle. And we're so blessed to be here today with a great lunch coming up ahead and great products, but not everyone in the country and around the world has access to that. So for Vitafusion, our mission is delicious nutrition for all and really making that happen. While we're very fortunate here today, over 50 million Americans struggle with food security on a regular basis and having access to that healthy food. So for Vitafusion, it's not only just, talking about this purpose and bringing it to life in campaigns, but really walking that talk and making sure that we as an internal team believe in it. And then putting the consumer first and really making sure that we bring delicious nutrition for all, like within the company, within our brand team and all our cross-functional partners, but also to our consumers so that everyone has access to nutrition and can meet their nutrition needs without having to worry about, is it going to be affordable for me? Am I going to have enough food to get throughout the day? So when we talk gummy vitamins, it helps bridge the gap for a lot of folks in communities where we do see those nutrient deficiencies. Vitamin D, for instance, is one where, it affects disproportionately people of color. So making sure that we bridge that gap in the community is super important for us as a brand and then just personally to me.
And how are you guys going about kind of bringing that to the community? How is that being kind of expressed?
Yeah, so instead of having the product or the brand be the focus, It's about the role that our brand plays in consumers' lives. So we try to ladder up to that emotional connection when we bring communications to life, instead of saying, oh, we're number one, or we are functional, we're nutritious, like really laddering up to that emotional connection, thinking about the consumer first, and then engaging in authentic partnerships to bring this to life. So a great example of how we've done that over the years is partnering with the Fruit Tree Planting Foundation. So I love that we're in this treehouse room, because it's perfectly on theme with fruit trees. So we've, over the years, we've planted over 200,000 fruit trees in underserved communities all around the country and around the world. And when you think about these trees, it's not just about going and doing the planting and, like it's great content for social media, like whatever, but beyond that, these trees, when they're matured, they're going to be able to provide over 30 million pieces of fruit annually to these underserved communities. So our upcoming planting in October is in the community of Watts, which is close to LA. So, lots of folks who don't have access to fresh fruit, fresh produce. So people will be able to walk into this community garden and be able to grab fruits for the day and bring it home to their family. So that's one way, we are able to make an impact. And the sustainability piece of this is huge too, right? These trees can help offset the carbon dioxide impact that we have in the air, and bring more oxygen as a result of it. So, it's really a win-win for us, and one way we're able to, live into that purpose.
All of the things that you're saying are, first of all, very cool and very amazing that you're actually within the communities. But as a marketer, you also need to be able to kind of express that, right? And let other people know that this is what Vitafusion is doing. This is what Church and Dwight are doing. So how do you guys incorporate what it is you're doing within your message and campaigns?
Yeah. And when it comes to purpose marketing, it's not just an ad hoc one-time thing where, we see a lot of brands participating in, like Pride Month, for example. You change your logo with a rainbow tie-in, and that's it. That's all you do for the year. But for us, it's about authentically engaging year-round in partners that make sense. So whether through planting fruit trees or engaging with the LGBTQ community through more grassroots efforts, we make sure that stands out in how we express ourselves, and the volunteer activities and everything that we do as a team, and the storytelling piece through packaging, creative, all our 360 activation, and even how we formulate and design products to meet the needs of people in our community.
So a lot of consumers have become a lot more aware, especially in, if there's anything good that came out of the pandemic, that people are a lot more aware, whether it's for social activism or being more conscious of the environment that we're in. How are you kind of supporting the causes that are important to your consumers in particular?
Yeah, and I think the consumer piece that you mentioned is so important, because it's not what the brand team wants. It's not what our leadership wants. We have to stand for what our consumers care about ultimately at the end of the day. So it's a combination of different initiatives. So I mentioned some of the partnerships that we engage in that are more authentic partnerships through our marketing efforts, of course. More grassroots approach too. So instead of, what can we do to like donate money to different organizations in our community, one thing that we've started to do is, can we look at product donations and teaching classes and being able to, actively engage with LGBTQ plus centers where they have youth that could really benefit from even just the knowledge transfer and not just, injecting money in there. So we're able to, bring it to life in a grassroots approach, and bring it to life through our marketing and our communications too.
Right. When you and I had talked, and I think it was also touched on earlier about, kind of going beyond just casting and talking, and being conscious of wardrobe and hair. When you are putting together campaigns, how are you looking and what are you looking for in terms of being able to execute and deliver the message?
Yeah. So for all the creative that we develop, we look at it from the perspective of our consumer and potentially others that, might have a different mindset than we do. So I'll give you an example of a recent creative we looked at because everyone was super excited about it. It was an African-American woman. She was in a power suit. She's excited. She didn't have hair, so it was like a very like power play. She was in a jumpsuit. So we were like, wow, it's great. Like it represents the diversity, the energy, the, empowering women, like all of those themes that we want to speak to as a brand. But, we really deep dive into like, okay, so how would a consumer perceive this? And we realized, it could potentially, like, we look for red flags and any like watch outs when we look at creative. So one thing, one of my team members pointed out was, hey, this is all great, but she's jumping 6 feet into the air. And that kind of perpetuates like African-American stereotypes that they're like really like athletic and, can do these like extraordinary things. So then I took a step back and said, wow, like that's something I wouldn't even have realized to think about because I'm like, oh, it's a woman of color. She's in this like great power pose. So I was like, I love everything about it. So sometimes it's taking a step back and really hearing the perspective of your team members and your consumers to make sure that, how you bring inclusive marketing to life is also, discussed before you roll out creative and making sure that we look at it from all lenses and it's not just, skin color or gender like we talked about. It's also, geographically where you live, body types, if we're including diverse talent, like are we making sure that those are truly representative of that community and not perpetuating stereotypes or bringing anything to life that might not be representative.
I think that there is definitely a level of the inclusivity that we utilize when we're trying to formulate a message. But then there's also, I believe Olivia had mentioned Danone's support of Black owned and minority owned companies. And, at Undertone, we, similar to vitafusion, you don't want to just walk the walk, right? Mm-hmm. And we do have the effort of being able to help our brand partners be part of minority, women, LGBTQ plus owned publishers so that they can convey their message to specific audiences. And then we end up giving money back if they spend within those publisher lists. How is somebody like a vitafusion or even Church and Dwight supporting specific communities in terms of their businesses?
Yeah, it's in various ways, right? So everything from supplier diversity and making sure that we choose the right partners and evaluating in the mix, right? If we have several partners to choose from, that minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses are considered as part of that, as well as including people on interview panels that are, like women or people of color, LGBTQ employees, et cetera. So it's a mix of all of those, right? Like being able to leverage right partners and making sure that they're included in the mix, and being intentional about who we partner with so that we can activate creative in the right way.
Absolutely. So Patagonia made some big news last week, right? And kind of walking their walk. Are there other companies that you think do it well in terms of their marketing efforts, not just from the message that they convey to the consumers and the world at large, but also with efforts that they do from the ground up?
Yeah. Gosh, Patagonia would have been one of the first ones that came to my mind. That's a tough one. So I think about, different, pharmaceutical companies that make a difference too. A lot of times, they're scrutinized for, having heavy marketing budgets and spending and et cetera. But I think, my past company comes to mind, Eli Lilly, because it was about making diabetes care affordable for all too. So that was one of the efforts where, on the human health side, the team was really working on initiatives to live into that mission. And the founder of that company believed in, whatever you do, like when you're in a role or in any situation, leave that situation better than you found it. And that was that definitely resonated with me as something that I want to do it everywhere I go to be able to make an impact. And so I think access to affordable medications was something that I've seen personally within pharma that resonated with me.
Oh, absolutely. That's very cool. So vitafusion is part of Church and Dwight, and I'm sure that they probably also have their own set of corporate social responsibilities. How does vitafusion kind of play into the overall mix as a parent company?
Yeah, so within Church and Dwight, we just acquired our 15th Power brand, and those are brands that are either number 1 or number 2 in the category that they play in. So we have a broader foundation that gives intentionally to different organizations around sustainability and giving back and purpose. So we have our like corporate initiatives, and then we have our specific brand initiatives as part of that. So we try to ladder up to the organizations that our foundation supports to begin with. So one example of that is the Trevor Project, where we, as a brand, work with them to bring activations to life. But then Church and Dwight, as a broader company, also gives back to the Trevor Project as part of their foundation too. So wherever there's opportunities to support both, we try to tie into that, of course. And then on the Arm & Hammer baking soda and like cat litter side, like they've done a lot of tie-ins to like animal shelters, for example. And there was like recently like a baseball like MLB tie-in too. So wherever brands can ladder up to the corporate purpose, it definitely makes sense.
Great. And since we kind of just jumped from all of the amazing women that we heard from in terms of marketing, what is it about Church and Dwight vitafusion that kind of made you land there? I mean, you moved from the Midwest all the way to Colorado Springs. You got, but you're sticking with the brand because of what they have to offer, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And I had asked early on in the process what, a brand like vitafusion stands for. So that delicious nutrition for all. And seeing some of the creative that before, I even took on this role, like helped me realize like, this is a gummy vitamin brand for me, because a lot of competitive vitamin brands that are out there, they're expensive. Like you see these, typical influencers, right? Like carrying the vitamin. It's like, like the Kim Kardashians, like saying, hey, take this gummy and you're going to lose weight. So it wasn't standing out in an authentic way. And I checked out vitafusion and I was like, this is really cool. They're quirky, they're fun, they're accessible. They're not trying to be anyone they're not, right? So it's that like modesty, that approachability, but still that like fun, quirky attitude that really attracted me to the brand. And, when you really see it on shelf too, of, wow, like I could be buying this, that's $30 and essentially the same thing that, we're activating that is more accessible to like the average consumer, which is, and the consumer's wallet speak to that since we've retained that number 1 position for as long as the brand has existed.
You had mentioned authenticity more than once in our conversation, and curious as to how do you think you're going to be able to kind of keep that going, right? To continue to make sure that you're not following, but truly standing out as you move the brand along in the next 5 years.
Yeah. I spoke to this a little bit earlier too, but ultimately like our consumer is the hero. It's not the product that's the hero. Cause I think a lot of times, when I've worked on past brands where I see it being not so authentic is like, wow, this is the great product that's going to solve all your problems. Right. So that doesn't come off in a very authentic way. So instead, how can we put our consumers first and really start from that insight? And when we think about new products we're launching, new campaigns that we're launching, and being grounded in just our fundamentals. So from our positioning to our messaging hierarchy, making sure that everything that we're saying is not trying to be something we're not, We're not going to be the fancy brand that's out there. We're not going to help you magically lose 20 pounds, right? So it's about like that everyday like modesty. And I think that comes out in a new way. Like even as we look at New Year's activations, we don't promise anything that, you know, like you're not going to attain in that like short period of time. So it's about how can we take baby steps to make this the big changes in the world.
That's wonderful. That is all I have. I want to open it up to any questions you might have for Chrissy. Well, Chrissy, I appreciate. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is this on? Okay. So thank you so much, by the way, for this amazing fireside chat. Learned so much. I'm just curious how you personally keep up with your consumers. Is there anything that you read daily, or are there any social media platforms that you're on to help you understand who you're talking to?
Yeah. I think the power of review, someone mentioned it earlier, is something that comes top of mind. So making sure we look at ratings and reviews and really listen to the consumer. So we'll pull like, you know, social sentiment and things like that regularly. Our consumer relations team who works in the call center, again, lots of great intel there. Outside of that, it's keeping tabs on macro trends in the industry, like immunity, for example. Anytime there's a COVID spike, we've seen the industry go completely crazy and then everything is sold out on shelf and we can't keep up with the demand, right? So that's the consumer telling us like, hey, like we have a heightened focus on immunity. We need more products that can help fulfill that need for me and my family. So that's another thing. And then shop alongs, I think whenever possible, are really helpful. When I was on the Splenda brand, we did a shop along with the sweeteners buyer at the time at Walmart. So we walked through the different aisles, like, you know, really talk through like, what's the consumer's path to purchase? And, you know, we look at it from such an internal perspective sometimes. And it does take, you know, looking at the digital shelf, looking at the physical shelf and doing these walkthroughs and shop alongs with real consumers whenever possible to make sure that their voices are incorporated into everything that we do.
So helpful. Thank you. One more. Who is it?
Hello, Reza. I'm a creator. I also work at #paid. Quick question on the Kim Kardashian comment. That being an example of a bad, inauthentic influencer marketing campaign, how do you stay authentic when you work with influencers, or rather creators, at vitafusion?
Yeah, we're pretty intentional about choosing like what influencers make sense for our brand too. So when we, you know, brief influencers, like we brief them on like the brand voice, what things like they should and they shouldn't do, like just the basics, right? But also in choosing our talent for more of like the macro and like celebrity level, and making sure that their personality jives with our brand and our demographics too. So, you know, like, you know, someone like Kim Kardashian, like probably wouldn't even like make it onto our list of like considerations. Whereas like someone who's more like keeping it real, like girl next door type personality would be more of like a fit for the brand. So, you know, making sure that we have the right partners to bring that voice to life is so important, because ultimately those influencers, right, are an extension of our brand because they're our ambassadors. So we want them to ultimately, one, believe in the brand, but also two, like have a personality that fits really well. And, you know, what fits well for like our brand might not necessarily work for another gummy vitamin brand, right? So that selection process and making sure that there's diligence and thought and intention going into it is super important.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time up here with me today.
Thank you, Del.